When was the last time you felt that crushing weight on your chest? That constant hum of anxiety playing in the background of your mind, stealing your peace, your joy, your very presence in your own life? You're not alone. The mind that worries is the mind that believes it must control everything. But what if I told you this need for control is precisely what's keeping you trapped? Look around you. The people who seem genuinely at peace aren't the ones who have solved all their problems. They're the ones who've stopped believing every problem needs solving this instant. Your worrying mind tells you it's keeping you safe, protected, prepared. But is it? Or is it robbing you of the only thing you truly have this moment? Carl Jung, one of history's most profound psychologists, understood something critical about the human psyche. What troubles us most isn't what happens to us, but what happens within us. The war isn't out there, it's in here.
Ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped worrying for just one day?
The thought itself creates resistance, doesn't it?
Up-tightening.
A fear. But if I don't worry, who will? If I don't anticipate every possible problem, I'm being irresponsible. My worry is what keeps everything from falling apart. These aren't random thoughts, they're defenses. And what they're defending isn't your well-being, it's your identity. The truth is unsettling. Your worry has become who you are. Jung called this psychological attachment a complex and emotional pattern so deeply rooted that it functions like an independent personality within you. Your worry complex has convinced you it's essential to your survival. It isn't.
Oh.
What if everything you've been chasing through worry, security, certainty, control, can only be found when you stop chasing them? Jung discovered something revolutionary about the human mind. He found that our conscious awareness, the you that you think you are, is merely the tip of a vast psychological iceberg. Beneath the surface lies the unconscious mind, containing everything you've denied, repressed, or never realized about yourself. This includes your capacity for peace, even in uncertainty. When Jung spoke of the shadow, he wasn't describing something sinister. He was referring to the parts of yourself you've disowned. And here's the paradox that changes everything. What you resist most persistently is often what you need most desperately. Your shadow isn't just your darkness, it's also your light. The qualities you've deemed too risky, too vulnerable, too uncertain to embody.
Like trust.
Surrender, acceptance. The shadow of a chronic worrier isn't recklessness, it's faith. You worry because somewhere along your path, you learned that the world isn't safe unless you're constantly on guard. This wasn't a conscious choice, it was an adaptation. A survival mechanism that once protected you, but now imprisons you. Every time your mind spirals into worst-case scenarios, it's attempting to create certainty where none exists, to control what cannot be controlled. This is the fundamental psychological tension at the heart of all worry, the gap between your desire for certainty and the inherent uncertainty of life. Jung understood that trying to eliminate this tension is futile. The solution isn't to get rid of uncertainty, it's to develop a different relationship with it. The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. Jung wrote, "The anxieties you refuse to face within become the very circumstances you fear without." This is projection, another critical Jungian concept. When you project, you see in the external world what you've denied in your internal one. The worrier projects catastrophe everywhere because they've denied their own capacity to handle whatever comes. They see a world full of threats because they've disowned their own resilience. Stop for a moment. Notice the thoughts running through your mind right now. Are they telling you this couldn't possibly apply to you? That your worries are legitimate, justified, different from everyone else's? That's resistance, the ego protecting itself, the worry identity fighting to survive. Jung would recognize this as the persona, the mask we wear to convince others and ourselves that we are who we think we should be. Your persona might be the responsible one, the prepared one, the one who cares enough to worry. But beneath this persona lies a deeper truth. Worry is not care. Worry is fear disguised as foresight. True care is present. Worry is always elsewhere, in a future that exists only in your mind. What makes worry so psychologically adhesive is that it creates the illusion of doing something about situations where you feel powerless. It mistakes mental activity for effective action. The mind says, if I worry enough about this problem, I'm addressing it. But worry is to problem solving what a rocking chair is to transportation, constant motion with no progress. Jung believed that psychological freedom begins with awareness. To see the pattern is to begin breaking free of it. Right now, you're seeing the pattern. Your relationship with worry isn't random. It follows specific psychological laws. First, worry attempts to create certainty in an uncertain world. Second, worry confuses thinking about problems with solving them. Third, worry projects internal fears onto external circumstances. Fourth, worry becomes a core identity. You become the worrier. Fifth, worry disconnects you from the present moment where real life occurs. These aren't character flaws. They're psychological mechanisms operating exactly as they were designed to. The problem isn't that they exist, but that they've taken control. Jung would say you haven't failed at eliminating worry, you've succeeded at maintaining a psychological pattern that once served you. Now you've outgrown its usefulness. The unconscious mind doesn't communicate through rational thought. It speaks through feelings, through impulses, through the body. That knot in your stomach when you think about the future, that's not proof that disaster awaits. It's a message from your unconscious about your relationship with uncertainty. What if you listened differently? What if that sensation isn't saying be afraid, but rather be present? Jung discovered that psychological symptoms are often attempts at self-healing. Your anxiety isn't just a problem, it's also a solution your psyche has created. The question is, a solution to what? Often the answer is a solution to the pain of being human, to the fundamental vulnerability of existing in a world you cannot control. When you worry, you're trying to think your way out of feeling, to use your mind to escape your heart. But psychological integration, the path to wholeness Jung called individuation, requires both thinking and feeling, both control and surrender. This is the painful truth at the heart of chronic worry. It's a misguided attempt to escape the inescapable condition of being human. And yet, in this recognition, lies the beginning of freedom. The mind that worries is a mind that's forgotten its own resources, your capacity for adaptation, for resilience, for growth through challenge. Jung found that the psyche naturally moves toward wholeness if we allow it, if we stop interfering with its wisdom through our conscious controlling and micromanaging. When you stop worrying, you don't abandon responsibility, you return to responsiveness, the ability to respond to what is, rather than reacting to what might be. This is the fundamental shift from reaction to response. Reaction is automatic, unconscious, driven by past conditioning. Response is chosen, conscious, present to current reality. Worry keeps you locked in reaction. Present awareness opens the door to response. The irony is striking. The very things you worry about, making mistakes, facing challenges, experiencing loss, are precisely the experiences that would develop the qualities that make worry unnecessary. You worry about failing because you don't trust your ability to handle failure. But how did you learn to walk? By falling. How did you learn to speak? By babbling nonsense. The capacity to fail and continue is already within you. It always has been. Jung observed that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Facing the truth about your relationship with worry isn't comfortable. It means acknowledging that much of what you believed was keeping you safe has actually been keeping you small. The psychological patterns of worry aren't limitless. They follow predictable paths, catastrophizing, imagining the worst possible outcome, black and white thinking, seeing situations as all or nothing, personalizing, assuming everything is about you or your fault, mind reading, believing you know what others are thinking, fortune telling, convincing yourself you can predict the future, should statements, imposing rigid rules on yourself and others. Each of these patterns represents a particular way the mind attempts to create certainty where none exists. Each is a strategy for avoiding the fundamental vulnerability of being human. Jung might describe these as complexes, emotionally charged clusters of thoughts and feelings that operate autonomously within the psyche. When activated, they temporarily take over, narrowing your perception to fit their narrative. Your worry complex says, if you stop worrying, everything will fall apart. The truth is, when you stop worrying, everything can fall into place. This isn't magical thinking, it's psychological reality. Worry narrows your vision, tenses your body, and locks your mind into rigid patterns. It literally prevents you from seeing opportunities, connections, and solutions that exist right in front of you. The relaxed present mind is infinitely more resourceful than the worried one. But knowing this intellectually isn't enough. The body has its own wisdom, its own memory. Your nervous system has learned to equate worry with safety. It needs new experiences, not just new ideas. This is why Jung emphasized the importance of lived experience in psychological transformation. You can't think your way out of worry, you must live your way out. Each time you notice worry arising and choose not to follow its familiar path, you're creating a new neural pathway. You're teaching your nervous system that presence is safer than projection, that response is more effective than reaction. The body that chronically worries is a body that's chronically preparing for danger. Muscles tense, breath shortens, digestion slows, blood flow restricts. This is the stress response, useful in true emergencies, harmful when constantly activated. Your body doesn't know the difference between an actual threat and a worried thought about a potential threat. It responds to both as if your life were in danger. This is why chronic worry isn't just psychologically depleting, it's physically exhausting. It keeps your body in a state of constant low-grade emergency. Jung understood that the mind and body aren't separate systems, but a unified whole. Psychological patterns manifest physically, and physical states influence psychology. The worried mind creates the tense body, and the tense body reinforces the worried mind. Breaking this cycle requires addressing both. The shadow aspect of worry contains its opposite, trust. Not blind trust that nothing bad will happen, but deeper trust in your capacity to meet whatever happens. Jung wrote that the shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door, whose painful constriction no one is spared, who goes down to the deep well. Facing your shadow, including the disowned capacity for trust, isn't easy. It means acknowledging that your worry hasn't been protecting you. It's been limiting you. This recognition often brings grief. Grief for the energy wasted, the moments missed, the life unlived while worry kept you circling the same mental territory again and again. Allow yourself to feel this grief. It's part of the liberation process. Jung observed that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When you find yourself irritated by someone else's carefree attitude or apparent lack of concern, ask yourself, what disowned part of me am I seeing in them? Often it's your own capacity for ease, for presence, for trust in life's unfolding that you've projected onto others as irresponsibility or naivety. The wisdom of Jung's approach lies in its paradoxical nature. You free yourself from worry, not by fighting it harder, but by understanding it more deeply. Not by resisting what is, but by fully accepting it as it is. When you truly see the psychological mechanisms driving your worry, without judgment, without identification, they begin to lose their unconscious power over you. This is the beginning of psychological freedom, not the absence of worried thoughts, but a new relationship with them, not identifying with them as me or mine, but observing them as temporary mental weather passing through the vast sky of awareness. The worried mind says, this shouldn't be happening. The liberated mind asks, what wants to happen here? The worried mind says, I must figure this out now. The liberated mind says, I can be with this not knowing. The worried mind says, what if everything goes wrong? The liberated mind asks, what's needed in this moment? This shift in perspective doesn't happen once and for all. It's a practice, a continuous returning to presence when worry pulls you into its familiar spiral. Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming psychologically whole, isn't about reaching a perfect state where worry never arises. It's about developing a conscious relationship with all parts of yourself, including the worrying part. The worried part of you isn't your enemy. It's a misguided protector that needs your understanding, not your rejection. When worry arises, try this. Instead of fighting it or following it, simply acknowledge its presence. I see you, worry. I understand you're trying to protect me. Then gently bring your attention back to the present moment, to your breath, your body, your immediate surroundings, not as a technique to get rid of worry, but as a choice to ground yourself in what's actually here now. This present moment awareness is the antidote to worry's future focus. It's not about forcing yourself to be positive or stop worrying. It's about recognizing where real life happens here, now, in this moment. The past exists only as memory. The future exists only as imagination. Only the present is real. When you anchor yourself in the present, you access resources that worry makes unavailable: clarity, creativity, connection, calm. These aren't abstract qualities. They're your natural state when not obscured by the mental activity of worry. Think of times when you've been fully absorbed in something you love, a creative pursuit, meaningful work, connection with someone you care about. In those moments, worry recedes not because you've conquered it, but because your attention is fully engaged with what's real right now. This is the state psychologists call flow, when you're so immersed in present experience that the worried self temporarily dissolves. These moments aren't accidental. They reveal your natural capacity for presence when not hijacked by the worry mind. Jung believed that what we most need for psychological healing is often found in our dreams, fantasies, and creative expressions, the languages of the unconscious mind. When you create, when you play, when you love, you're speaking these languages directly. You're bypassing the worried mind and accessing deeper wisdom. This doesn't mean ignoring legitimate concerns or responsibilities. It means distinguishing between productive planning and unproductive worry, between addressing what's within your control and fretting about what isn't. Planning happens in a calm, clear mental state and leads to specific actions. Worry happens in an anxious, confused mental state and leads to more worry. The difference isn't in the content of your thoughts, but in your relationship to them. Are you using your mind as a tool, or is your mind using you? Your worried thoughts aren't facts. They're interpretations, predictions, assumptions, many of which won't stand up to conscious examination. Jung noted that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Worry is often a way of avoiding deeper truths about what you really want, what you really fear, who you really are beneath the roles you play and the masks you wear. The path forward isn't about becoming someone who never worries. It's about recognizing that you are not your worry. You are the awareness in which worry appears. This recognition is the threshold to the next phase of transformation, where we move beyond understanding the problem to experiencing a profound shift in consciousness that changes everything. Are you ready? Are you ready? Because what comes next might challenge everything you think you know about yourself. The question isn't whether you worry. The question is, who would you be without your worry? This question terrifies the ego because it threatens your familiar identity. If you've spent years, perhaps decades, being the careful one, the responsible one, the one who thinks of everything that could go wrong, who are you without these labels? Jung called this profound identity shift individuation, the process of becoming your whole self, rather than the limited version you've identified with. It's not about becoming someone different. It's about becoming more completely who you already are beneath the conditioned patterns. Your worried self isn't your true self. It's a strategy your true self adopted to navigate a world it perceived as threatening. Consider this: a child who grows up with unpredictable parents might develop hypervigilance, constantly scanning for signs of danger, attempting to anticipate and prevent problems before they arise. This strategy helps the child survive an unstable environment. But what happens when that child becomes an adult and continues the same pattern in relationships and circumstances that no longer warrant it? The adaptive becomes maladaptive. The solution becomes the problem. This is the psychological inheritance many worriers carry: strategies that once served a purpose, but now create the very suffering they were meant to prevent. Jung understood that healing doesn't come from rejecting these patterns, but from recognizing their original purpose with compassion. Your worry wasn't a mistake. It was the best solution your younger self could find with the resources available at the time. Thank that younger self. Honor their ingenuity, and then gently show them that new resources are now available. This is integration, bringing the disowned unconscious aspects of yourself into conscious awareness where they can be transformed. Integration doesn't mean eliminating parts of yourself. It means bringing them into right relationship. Your capacity for foresight, planning, and recognizing potential problems doesn't disappear when worry subsides. It becomes a tool you use rather than a compulsion that uses you. The warrior in you needs to be heard, not silenced. Suppressing worry only drives it deeper into the unconscious, where it gains power and emerges in disguised forms, physical symptoms, displaced fears, projections onto others. Instead, create an inner dialogue. When worry arises, ask, "What are you trying to tell me? What do you need me to know?" Often beneath the surface content of worry, simpus, "What if I fail? What if they reject me? What if I can't handle it?" lies a deeper message. I don't feel safe. I don't feel capable. I don't feel worthy. These core beliefs weren't born in adulthood. They formed in early experiences where your developing psyche drew conclusions about yourself and the world. Jung called these primal patterns archetypes, universal psychological structures that shape how we experience reality. The victim archetype believes, "Life happens to me. I am powerless." The orphan archetype believes, "I am alone. No one will help me." The warrior archetype believes, "Life is a battle. I must fight to survive." These archetypal patterns operate beneath conscious awareness, coloring your perception and driving behavior without your knowledge, until you make them conscious. Which archetypal patterns fuel your worry? For many, it's the vulnerable child archetype, the part that feels small, helpless, and overwhelmed by a world perceived as threatening. When this archetype dominates your unconscious, life itself feels dangerous. Every uncertainty becomes a potential disaster. But alongside this vulnerable child exists the divine child archetype, the part that naturally trusts life, approaches the unknown with curiosity rather than fear, and maintains wonder even in difficulty. Both archetypes are aspects of your whole self. Integration means acknowledging both, the vulnerability and the resilience, the fear and the trust. Jung wrote that wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being but by integration of the contraries. The path forward isn't about becoming fearless. It's about holding fear alongside courage, uncertainty alongside trust, limitation alongside possibility. This integration happens not through intellectual understanding alone, but through lived experience that challenges your limiting beliefs about yourself and the world. Each time you face a situation that triggers worry and choose a different response, you're rewiring both your psychology and your neurobiology. You're creating new neural pathways that make presence more accessible and worry less compelling. Think of these new pathways as trails through a forest. The worry path is a highway, well-traveled and automatic. The presence path begins as a narrow trail that requires conscious effort to follow. But each time you choose it, the trail widens. Eventually, presence becomes as accessible as worry once was. This is neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize itself through new experiences. Your nervous system isn't fixed. It's constantly adapting based on how you use it. When you worry chronically, you're training your nervous system to perceive threat everywhere. When you practice presence, you're training it to remain calm and clear, even amid uncertainty. But this retraining doesn't happen through force or willpower. It happens through awareness, compassion, and consistent practice. The first step is simply noticing, "I'm worrying right now." Not judging the worry, not trying to stop it, just recognizing its presence. This creates a crucial space between you and the worry. Oh! You are not your worry. You are the awareness observing it. In this space lies freedom. From here you can choose to relate to worry differently, not as an enemy to be defeated or a truth to be believed, but as one perspective among many, and not necessarily the most accurate or helpful one. Jung observed that the pendulum of the mind alternates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong. Worry isn't wrong, it's simply a limited perspective that excludes other equally valid ways of seeing your situation. The worried mind fixates on what might go wrong. The integrated mind can hold multiple perspectives: what might go wrong, what might happen that you can't predict at all. This psychological flexibility, the ability to shift perspectives rather than remaining locked in one, is a hallmark of mental health and resilience. The worrier says, "I must know what will happen." The integrated self says, "I can respond to whatever happens." The worrier says, Uncertainty is dangerous. The integrated self says, uncertainty contains possibility. The worrier says, I must prevent all potential problems. The integrated self says, I can handle problems as they arise. This shift doesn't happen intellectually. It happens experientially. Your body needs to feel what it's like to face uncertainty and survive, even thrive. Your nervous system needs to learn that the unknown isn't automatically dangerous. Small, consistent steps build this new reality. Begin with low-stakes situations where you can practice responding to uncertainty with presence rather than worry. When a minor plan changes unexpectedly, instead of immediately spinning into worry about what might go wrong, feel your feet on the ground. Take a breath, ask what's needed now. What possibility exists in this change? These small moments train your nervous system to associate uncertainty with adaptability rather than danger. Over time, this new association extends to larger uncertainties. Jung understood that psychological transformation often requires symbolic action that speaks directly to the unconscious mind. Consider creating a ritual that represents your changing relationship with worry. Write your most persistent worries on paper, then burn them while speaking words of release. Or create a worry stone. Each time a worry arises, hold the stone, acknowledge the worry, then place the stone down as a physical gesture of setting down the mental burden. These symbolic acts communicate your intention to the deeper parts of your psyche that don't respond to rational argument but do respond to imagery, metaphor, and ritual. The unconscious mind thinks in symbols. When you work with symbols consciously, you're speaking the language of the unconscious directly. Jung emphasized the importance of dreams in psychological integration. Dreams often reveal what the conscious mind overlooks, including resources and capacities you've disowned. Pay attention to dreams where you feel unusually confident, capable, or calm. These dreams may be showing you aspects of yourself that exist beneath the worry identity. They're reminding you of who you already are when worry subsides. Similarly, nightmares about worst-case scenarios aren't necessarily predictions. They're often the psyche's attempt to process and release anxiety that's been suppressed during waking hours. When you acknowledge these fears consciously, the dreams often change. The unconscious communicates not just through dreams but through synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that seem to respond directly to your inner questions or struggles. When you're grappling with a decision and repeatedly encounter relevant information or opportunities, the unconscious may be guiding you toward what Jung called your individuation path, the unique expression of your wholeness. This guidance often appears precisely when you stop trying to control everything through worry, and instead trust the intelligence greater than the conscious mind alone. Jung wrote that your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams, and who looks inside, awakens. The answers you seek through worry aren't found in endless mental spinning. They emerge when you quiet the noise of anxiety and listen to the deeper wisdom within. This wisdom isn't exotic or esoteric. It's your natural intelligence temporarily obscured by the static of worry, but always present beneath it. Think of times when you've had a clear intuition about a decision or situation, not through obsessive analysis but through a quiet knowing. This intuitive capacity doesn't disappear when you worry, it simply becomes inaccessible. When worry subsides, intuition naturally re-emerges. Jung distinguished between the personal unconscious, containing your individual repressed or forgotten experiences, and the collective unconscious, holding the accumulated wisdom of humanity across generations and cultures. When you access intuition, you're drawing on both these vast resources. Your worried mind says, I must figure everything out alone. The truth is, you have access to wisdom far beyond your personal experience. The collective unconscious speaks through universal symbols and patterns, Jung called archetypes. The hero archetype represents the courage to face the unknown. The sage archetype embodies inner wisdom and perspective. The magician archetype symbolizes transformation and alignment with greater laws. Each of these archetypes exists within you as potential, not something to attain but something to recognize and embody. When worry dominates, you're locked in the victim or orphan archetypal pattern. As you integrate, you gain access to archetypes that offer different relationships with uncertainty. The explorer welcomes the unknown as adventure. The creator sees problems as opportunities for innovation. The ruler maintains calm authority amid chaos. These aren't personalities to imitate, but energies to access within yourself. They emerge naturally as you free yourself from the grip of the worry complex. Jung observed that the greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved but only outgrown. You don't solve worry by worrying better. You outgrow it by expanding into a larger identity that can hold both certainty and uncertainty, both knowledge and mystery. This expansion happens through what Jung called active imagination, consciously engaging with the contents of your unconscious through dialogue, artwork, movement, or writing. When worry arises, try speaking with it rather than from it. What do you fear most? What are you trying to protect me from? What do you need to feel safe? Listen to the answers without judgment. The worried part of you isn't trying to torment you. It's trying in its limited way to help you. When it feels heard, it often relaxes its grip. Jung found that psychological integration requires accepting the shadow, not just the negative qualities you've disowned but also the positive ones too threatening to claim. For chronic worriers, these include power, confidence, ease, and trust. Why would positive qualities be threatening? Because they challenge your established identity and require responsibility for your own life. It's paradoxically safer to worry about what might go wrong than to own your power to create what might go right. The shadow isn't eliminated through integration. It's transformed from an unconscious saboteur into a conscious ally. The energy once used for worry becomes available for creation, connection, and purposeful action. This transformation reveals another Jungian insight, the principle of enantiodromia, the tendency of things to turn into their opposites when taken to extremes. Push control to its extreme, and you create chaos. Push certainty to its extreme, and you encounter its shadow, paralyzing doubt. The worrier who insists on complete certainty before acting creates precisely the stagnation they fear. The planner who must account for every possibility becomes immobilized by endless scenarios. The perfectionist who must get everything right ensures nothing gets done at all. The solution isn't the opposite extreme, recklessness, denial, or abandoning responsibility. It's the middle path Jung called the transcendent function, the capacity to hold opposites in creative tension rather than collapsing into either pole. Not all worry or no worry, but appropriate concern. Not all control or no control, but influence where possible and acceptance where not. Not all certainty or no certainty, but comfort with both knowing and not knowing. This middle path isn't compromise or dilution. It's a higher integration that includes the valid aspects of both extremes while transcending their limitations. When Jung spoke of wholeness, he wasn't describing perfection but completeness, the acceptance and integration of all aspects of yourself, including the parts that worry, feel afraid, make mistakes, and need reassurance. This integration doesn't happen through self-improvement, but through self-acceptance. Not, I must become better, but I must become more fully myself. The paradox is striking. You release worry not by becoming someone who never worries, but by fully accepting yourself as someone who sometimes does worry, without identifying with the worry or believing it defines you. This acceptance creates space where transformation naturally occurs. Just as a clenched fist can't receive what's offered, a mind clenched around worry can't receive the peace that's always available beneath the mental noise. Jung described neurosis as suffering that has not found its meaning. When you search for the meaning in your worry, rather than just trying to eliminate it, everything shifts. What if your worry isn't meaningless torment but a guide pointing toward what needs healing, integration, or conscious attention? Often chronic worries point to deeper needs. Worry about rejection points to the need for self-acceptance. Worry about failure points to the need for self-compassion. Worry about the future points to the need for present engagement. Worry about control points to the need for trust. When you address these deeper needs directly, the surface worries often dissolve on their own, not because you've conquered them, but because they're no longer necessary messengers. This perspective transforms worry from an enemy to be defeated into a signpost to be followed toward greater wholeness. It's not about getting rid of the signpost, but following where it leads. Jung noted that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Your irritation with others' apparent carelessness or lack of concern may reveal a disowned part of yourself that knows how to trust, how to flow with life rather than fight it, how to be present rather than projecting into catastrophic futures. These projections aren't failures, they're opportunities for reclaiming disowned aspects of yourself. When you recognize yourself and what triggers you about others, you retrieve pieces of your wholeness. This retrieval doesn't happen intellectually. It happens through conscious relationship with the disowned parts, not analyzing them but experiencing them, embodying them, allowing them expression in appropriate contexts. If you've disowned your capacity for ease or spontaneity, create small, safe opportunities to experience these qualities directly. Notice the resistance that arises, the worry that says something bad will happen if you relax your guard. Then gently continue anyway, building evidence that contradicts the worry belief. Over time, these new experiences create a psychological reality where worry is no longer necessary because you've proven to yourself, not just intellectually but experientially, that you can handle uncertainty. That presence is more effective than panic, that life supports you when you stop fighting it. Jung believed that what you resist persists. The more you fight worry, the more entrenched it becomes. The solution isn't resistance but relationship, relating to worry differently, from a place of compassionate awareness, rather than fearful identification. This relationship begins with simple acknowledgement. Worry is present, not I am worried, which identifies you with the temporary state, but worry is arising in my awareness right now. This subtle distinction changes everything. It puts worry in its proper place, not as your identity, but as a temporary visitor in the vast field of your consciousness. From here you can ask, what's beneath this worry? What's it trying to tell me? What does it need? Often the answer is surprisingly simple: to be heard, to be acknowledged, to have its legitimate concerns separated from its catastrophic predictions. When you respond to these deeper needs, worry often naturally subsides, not because you've eliminated it, but because you've addressed what was driving it. This is psychological alchemy, transforming the lead of worry into the gold of awareness, not by fighting what is but by fully allowing it, seeing it clearly, and discovering the gift hidden within the struggle. The gift isn't worry itself but what worry has been obscuring: your natural capacity for peace, presence, and responsibility, the ability to respond to life as it unfolds rather than reacting to fears about what might unfold. This capacity isn't something to achieve. It's something to recognize as already present, already yours, beneath the temporary weather of worried thoughts. The mind that worries is like a cloudy sky that's forgotten the sun still shines above the clouds. The sun doesn't need to be created or achieved, only remembered, recognized as the constant reality behind temporary obscuration. Your natural state isn't chronic anxiety. It's presence, peace, and engagement with life as it is, not as you fear it might be, or demand it should be. This natural state becomes accessible when you stop trying to create it, and instead remove what blocks your awareness of its constant presence. What blocks this awareness? Primarily, identification with thought, the habit of believing that you are your thoughts, rather than the awareness in which thoughts appear and disappear. When a worried thought arises, and you believe this is me, or this is true, you've identified with the thought. When you recognize this is a thought appearing in my awareness, you've stepped back into your true position as the witness of thought, rather than thought itself. This witnessing capacity, this awareness, is what Jung might have called the self, with a capital S, as distinct from the ego, or small self. It's the ground of your being, unaffected by the changing contents of consciousness, just as the sky remains unchanged by passing clouds. From this ground everything changes. Worry doesn't disappear, but it no longer defines you or controls you. It becomes one small part of a much larger experience, like a single instrument in an orchestra, rather than a soloist, drowning out every other sound. This shift in identity, from the worried mind to the awareness witnessing the worried mind, is the profound transformation Jung pointed toward with the individuation process. Not becoming someone different, but recognizing who you've always been beneath the conditioned patterns and limited identities. The question remains, how do you maintain this recognition when worry threatens to pull you back into old patterns? How do you stabilize this new relationship with yourself and with life? The answer involves both understanding and practice, both insight and experience, the twin pillars of lasting psychological transformation. And this brings us to the next phase of the journey, from intellectual understanding to lived embodiment, from knowing the path to walking it. Are you still with me? Because now comes the most important part, turning insight into transformation. Understanding worry isn't enough. You must embody a new relationship with it, not just know the path but walk it. What does this look like in your daily life? It begins with a fundamental choice each time worry appears. Will you follow the familiar path of identification and escalation, or will you choose the path of awareness and presence? This choice isn't made once. It's made thousands of times in thousands of moments. Each choice is a step on the path of what Jung called individuation, becoming your whole, integrated self, rather than the fragment that identifies with worry. The practical process involves these essential elements. First, recognition. Notice when worry arises without judging it or yourself for experiencing it. Simply observe, worry is present. This creates space between you and the worry. You are not your worry, you are the awareness witnessing it. Second, inquiry. Ask what's beneath this worry. What's the core fear or belief driving it? Often surface worries about specific outcomes mask deeper fears about your worth, safety, or capability. Third, compassion. Respond to the worried part of yourself as you would to a frightened child. Not with dismissal or impatience, but with understanding. I see you're afraid. It makes sense you'd feel that way given what you've experienced. Fourth, redirection. Gently bring your attention back to the present moment, to your breath, your body, your immediate surroundings. Not to escape the worry, but to ground yourself in what's actually happening now, rather than what your mind fears might happen later. Fifth, expansion. Remind yourself of the larger truth. You are more than this temporary state. Your capacity for peace, presence, and effective action remains even when temporarily obscured by worry. This process isn't about perfection, it's about practice. You won't always catch worry the moment it arises. You won't always respond with perfect awareness. This doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human, engaged in the most human of journeys. Waking up to your own conditioned patterns and choosing again and again to relate to them differently. Jung understood that psychological transformation isn't a linear process but a spiral, revisiting similar challenges at deeper levels. You don't overcome worry once and for all. You develop an increasingly conscious relationship with it, so that even when it appears, it no longer controls you. The goal isn't a worry-free life, it's freedom within life as it is, including the natural arising of worried thoughts. Not freedom from worry, but freedom with worry, the capacity to experience it without being defined or limited by it. This freedom emerges not from eliminating parts of yourself, but from expanding your sense of who you are to include all parts, the worried and the peaceful, the fearful and the trusting, the controlled and the spontaneous. Jung wrote that there is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. The integration that liberates you from worry's grip doesn't create perfection. It creates wholeness, the acceptance of your full humanity, including the messy, contradictory, imperfect aspects you've been trying to fix or change through worry. This acceptance isn't resignation to limitation. It's the recognition that true growth happens not through rejection of what is, but through embracing it so completely that its inherent intelligence can reveal itself. The worried mind is always trying to arrive somewhere else, some imagined future state, where everything is finally certain, secure, and under control. But life happens only now, in this moment. Every moment spent in worried projection about the future is a moment of real life missed. The present moment isn't just a spiritual concept, it's the only place where effective action is possible. When your mind is caught in worry about what might happen, your capacity to respond skillfully to what is happening diminishes dramatically. Think of times when you've been fully present, perhaps during an emergency or intense challenge that required your complete attention. In those moments, Your mind didn't have the luxury of spinning worried scenarios about what might happen. It was fully engaged with what was happening. And in that engagement, you likely experienced a clarity and capability that worry makes inaccessible. This is the paradox that liberates when you stop trying to control the future through worry, and instead fully engage with the present. Your actual influence on how things unfold increases rather than decreases. The worried mind says, if I just think about this enough, I can prevent bad things from happening. The truth is, when I'm fully present, I respond more effectively to whatever happens. The worried mind says, I must anticipate every possibility or I'll be caught unprepared. The truth is, no amount of anticipation can prepare me for the infinite possibilities of life. Presence is the only adequate preparation. The worried mind says, if I stop worrying, I'm being irresponsible. The truth is, worry is not responsibility. Presence is the foundation of true responsibility, the ability to respond. Each time you choose presence over worry, you're not just changing your psychological state, you're literally changing your brain through neuroplasticity, creating and strengthening neural pathways that make presence more accessible and worry less compelling. This neurobiological change doesn't happen overnight. It happens through consistent practice, just as physical strength develops through regular exercise. Each moment of chosen presence is a repetition that strengthens the neural pathway of awareness and weakens the automatic pathway of worry. Jung recognized that psychological transformation requires both internal and external changes. The internal shift in perspective must be embodied in concrete actions and choices that reinforce the new reality you're creating. What does this look like practically? Begin with small, manageable situations where worry typically arises. Instead of automatically following the worry path, experiment with staying present. Notice what happens when you don't indulge the what-ifs, but instead focus on what is right now. For example, if you tend to worry about being late, experiment with leaving at your normal time but staying present during the journey, rather than projecting into catastrophic scenarios about the consequences of lateness. Notice the difference in your experience, not just mentally, but physically and emotionally. Or if you worry about a conversation that needs to happen, practice staying present during the actual conversation, rather than rehearsing it endlessly beforehand or analyzing it endlessly afterward. Feel the difference between projecting and presence. These experiments build evidence that contradicts the worry belief system. Your body and nervous system begin to learn, through direct experience, that presence is actually safer and more effective than worry, not because nothing challenging ever happens, but because you handle whatever happens more skillfully when fully present. This experiential learning is more powerful than any intellectual understanding. Your body needs to feel what it's like to face uncertainty with presence rather than panic, to encounter unexpected circumstances with response rather than reaction, to navigate life from the ground of awareness rather than the quicksand of worry. As these experiences accumulate, a profound shift occurs. The energy previously consumed by worry becomes available for creation, connection, and purposeful action. Life force that was trapped in mental loops returns to your body, your relationships, your work, your moments. You feel more alive because you are more present for your own life. This increased aliveness often brings challenges of its own. Jung noted that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, but this becoming requires facing the fears that have kept you small, limited, and identified with partial aspects of yourself, like the worry identity. As you expand beyond this limited identity, you encounter aspects of yourself that were previously unconscious or denied, not just your fears but your power, not just your vulnerability, but your strength, not just your doubt but your knowing. This encounter can be disorienting. The familiar limitations of the worry identity provided a kind of security, the security of the known, however uncomfortable. Stepping beyond these limitations means entering the unknown, not just externally, but internally. Who are you beyond your worry? What becomes possible when you're no longer defined by fear of what might go wrong? These questions can't be answered intellectually. They must be lived into. The answers emerge through action, through choice, through moment-by-moment presence, with what is rather than projection into what might be. Jung believed that psychological freedom comes not from escaping difficulty, but from finding meaning within it. The shoe that fits one person pinches another, he wrote. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Your particular relationship with worry has shaped you in unique ways. The qualities you've developed through this relationship, perhaps heightened sensitivity, deep empathy, careful attention to detail, commitment to responsibility, remain available even as you free yourself from worry's grip. These qualities are part of your wholeness. Liberating yourself from worry doesn't mean abandoning these strengths, but accessing them consciously, by choice, rather than through the unconscious compulsion of anxiety. This is the alchemical transformation Jung described, not eliminating elements of your psyche, but changing their form, transmuting unconscious reactions into conscious capabilities. The worried mind automatically catastrophizes, jumping to worst-case scenarios about what might happen. The transformed mind can anticipate potential challenges without catastrophizing, using foresight as a tool rather than being used by it. The worried mind automatically personalizes, assuming negative events reflect something wrong with you. The transformed mind can distinguish between what you're responsible for and what you're not, responding appropriately without unnecessary self-blame. The worried mind automatically generalizes, turning specific concerns into global fears about everything. The transformed mind can address specific situations directly without projecting fear across your entire life. These transformations don't eliminate the original patterns. They integrate them into a larger awareness that can use the patterns when helpful and set them aside when not. Jung understood that this integration requires both inner and outer work, both psychological awareness and concrete action in the world. The inner recognition must be embodied in outer choices that reinforce the new relationship with yourself and with life. Consider creating specific practices that anchor this new relationship. A morning reflection where you set your intention to meet worry with awareness when it arises during the day. A physical gesture, like placing your hand on your heart, that reminds you to respond to worry with compassion rather than judgment. An evening review where you notice when you were caught by worry and when you were able to remain present, without criticism but with gentle commitment to growing awareness. Regular time in nature, which naturally evokes presence and perspective beyond the narrow confines of the worried mind. Movement practices like yoga, tai chi, or dance that bring awareness back to the body when the mind has been spinning in worry. Creative expression that gives form to what you're experiencing inside, allowing unconscious material to become conscious through art, writing, music, or other forms. Meaningful connection with others who support your growth beyond limiting patterns and mirror back to you the wholeness you sometimes forget. These practices aren't escapes from reality. They're reminders of a larger reality than the one the worried mind presents, a reality that includes uncertainty but isn't limited to fear of it, that acknowledges challenges but isn't defined by them. Jung believed that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. When you liberate yourself from the grip of worry, you're not just changing your own experience, you're changing what you model and transmit to others, especially if you're a parent, leader, or someone whose way of being influences those around you. Your transformation creates ripples that extend far beyond your personal experience. As you embody a different relationship with uncertainty, one based in presence and trust rather than projection and fear, you make this possibility more accessible to everyone you touch. This isn't about pretending challenges don't exist or that pain doesn't happen. It's about meeting what life brings from a ground of presence rather than a stance of fearful anticipation. Pain is inevitable in human life. Suffering, the mental amplification of pain through resistance, judgment, and projection, is optional. Much of worry's suffering comes not from actual circumstances, but from resistance to them, from demanding that life be different than it is. When you release this demand, not through resignation but through recognition of its futility, space opens for a different relationship with whatever is happening. Not this shouldn't be, but this is, and I can respond to it. Jung wrote that man needs difficulties, they are necessary for health. The challenges you worry about aren't obstacles to your well-being. When met with presence rather than panic, they become opportunities for growth, for developing qualities that can't be developed any other way. Your capacity for resilience develops through facing difficulty, not avoiding it. Your capacity for courage develops through feeling fear and acting anyway. Your capacity for wisdom develops through encountering uncertainty with presence. These capacities are already within you. They don't need to be created, only uncovered as you free yourself from the limited identity that fears they don't exist. The worried mind says, I can't handle what might happen. The truth is, I've handled everything life has brought so far, and I'll handle whatever comes next, not because I can predict or control it, but because resilience is my nature. This truth isn't a mental reassurance. It's a lived reality you verify through direct experience each time you meet a challenge with presence rather than projecting into catastrophic futures. Each such experience builds evidence that contradicts the fundamental belief driving worry that you aren't equipped to handle life as it unfolds. This evidence accumulates not in your intellect, but in your body, in your nervous system, in your direct knowing of your own capabilities. As this knowing deepens, worry naturally subsides, not because you've conquered it through force of will, but because you've addressed its root cause, the unconscious belief in your own inadequacy. This belief wasn't born from nowhere. It formed through early experiences where you felt overwhelmed, unsupported, or unable to cope with what was happening. Those experiences were real. The conclusion drawn from them, that you're fundamentally incapable of handling life, was understandable but inaccurate. You were doing the best you could with the resources available at the time. As an adult, you have resources that weren't available to your younger self, inner resources of awareness, perspective, and choice, as well as outer resources of knowledge, support, and capability. Recognizing these resources doesn't eliminate worry immediately. It begins a process of updating your inner map of reality to include not just the learned limitations but also the innate capacities that worry has obscured. This updating happens through direct experience, not intellectual persuasion. Your body needs to feel what it's like to face uncertainty and respond effectively, to encounter the unexpected and adapt creatively, to lose control and discover the deeper security that lies beneath it. Jung observed that there can be no transforming of darkness into light and of apathy into movement without emotion. Psychological transformation isn't an intellectual exercise. It's a full-bodied, full-hearted engagement with life that includes all your feelings, including the fear that drives worry. The path forward isn't about eliminating emotions but experiencing them fully without being defined or controlled by them. Not freedom from feeling, but freedom within feeling. The capacity to feel everything while remaining grounded in the awareness that is your true nature. This grounding develops through consistent practice, through bringing awareness to the present moment again and again when worry pulls you into projected futures or ruminated pasts. Not as a technique to get rid of worry, but as a choice to live from a larger truth than the one worry presents. The larger truth is this: you are not your worry. You are not your thoughts about what might happen. You are not your feelings of fear or your sensations of anxiety. You are the awareness in which all these temporary experiences arise, exist, and pass away, like clouds in the vast sky of consciousness. This awareness isn't something to achieve. It's what you already are and have always been, beneath the temporary weather of worried thoughts and anxious feelings. It hasn't gone anywhere when worry appears, just as the sky doesn't disappear when clouds fill it. Recognition of this awareness as your true nature is the profound liberation Jung pointed toward with the individuation process. Not becoming someone else, but recognizing who you've always been beneath the conditioned patterns and limited identities. From this recognition, everything changes. The situations that triggered worry may still arise, but your relationship with them is fundamentally different. You're no longer identified with the worry that appears about them. You're grounded in the awareness that witnesses worry without becoming it. This witnessing capacity creates space to respond rather than react, to choose rather than be compelled, to meet life with presence rather than projection. In this space lies freedom, not the imagined freedom of a life without challenges, but the real freedom of meeting whatever arises from the ground of your true nature rather than the limitations of conditioned patterns. This freedom isn't static. It's alive, dynamic, constantly refreshing itself through your choice, in each moment to return to presence when worry pulls you away from it. The choice becomes increasingly natural over time, Not because worry disappears but because your identification with it diminishes. You still experience the thoughts, feelings, and sensations of worry, but you no longer believe this is me or this is reality. You recognize worry as one small part of a much larger experience, like a single instrument in an orchestra, rather than a soloist drowning out every other sound. And in this recognition, the door opens to a life beyond the limitations of the worried mind, a life where uncertainty becomes a field of possibility rather than a source of fear, where challenges become opportunities for growth rather than threats to safety, where the unknown becomes an adventure rather than a danger. This life isn't somewhere else, in some imagined future when you've finally conquered worry once and for all. It's here, now, available in each moment you choose presence over projection, response over reaction, trust over fear. The choice is yours, in this moment and the next, not to become someone different, but to recognize and live from who you've always been beneath the surface of worry, whole, capable, resilient, alive. When you stop worrying, everything falls into place, not because circumstances magically arrange themselves to your liking, but because you finally see what's already in place, your innate capacity to meet life as it is, and respond from presence rather than fear. This is the freedom that awaits, not at the end of some long journey, but in the simple choice, available now, to relate differently to the worry that arises, to recognize it without identifying with it, to neither suppress it nor surrender to it, but to hold it in the larger awareness that is your true nature. The choice is always available, it always has been. What will you choose? If this perspective has resonated with you, I invite you to take the next step in your journey of psychological liberation. Subscribe to this channel for more insights into the wisdom of Carl Jung and the path of conscious living. Share your experiences in the comments below. Your journey may illuminate the path for others walking a similar road. Remember, you are not your worry. You are the awareness in which worry appears and disappears. And in that awareness lies the freedom you've been seeking all along. Until next time, peace be with you, not as a distant goal but as the ever-present reality beneath the temporary clouds of worry.